In a pivotal move on the global stage, indirect nuclear talks between the United States and Iran have officially begun in Muscat, Oman, the first high-level diplomatic engagement since the U.S. withdrew from the 2015 nuclear deal under President Trump back in 2018. Mediated by Oman, the negotiations are taking place in separate rooms, a clear reflection of the fragile trust between the two nations. Representing the U.S., Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has made one thing clear: Iran must not develop nuclear weapons. President Trump has even issued a stark warning, threatening military action if diplomacy fails.
That have nuclear power that shouldn't have it, but I'm sure we'll be able to negotiate out of that too as part of this later on down the line. But Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And if the talks aren't successful, I actually think it'll be a very bad day for Iran if that's the case.
On the other side, Iran's delegation, led by Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, is pushing for sanctions relief and a just agreement, one that allows limited nuclear activities while keeping its infrastructure intact. While no breakthrough is expected just yet, these talks could set the stage for future dialogue. And time is of the essence. Iran's uranium stockpile is rapidly approaching weapons-grade enrichment levels. The world now watches closely to see, will these talks open the door to direct negotiations or lead to a dangerous escalation? Let's see what happens. At the heart of the US-Iran nuclear talks, a set of uncompromising demands from both sides. For the United States, the priority is clear: stop Iran's uranium enrichment near weapons-grade levels. Washington is calling for the dismantling of critical parts of Iran's nuclear program to eliminate any path to weaponization. They're also demanding strict, intrusive inspections to ensure full compliance. And the message from the White House is firm: no nuclear weapons. Should negotiations fail, the U.S. is prepared to respond with military action or even harsher sanctions.
I think if the talks aren't successful with Iran, I think Iran is going to be in great danger. And I hate to say it, great danger, because they can't have a nuclear weapon.
Iran, on the other hand, has its own red lines. Tehran is pushing for immediate relief from crushing U.S.-led economic sanctions, especially those targeting oil exports and financial institutions. But that's not all. Iran insists on preserving its nuclear infrastructure for peaceful, civilian use. And after the 2018 deal collapse, Iran is demanding ironclad guarantees, assurances that future U.S. administrations won't simply walk away again. This negotiation is a high-stakes balancing act, with the U.S. focused on non-proliferation and Iran determined to secure economic recovery and national sovereignty. All of this plays out as Iran's uranium stockpile inches dangerously close to weapons-grade levels, raising the stakes with every passing day. The stakes couldn't be higher because if the U.S.-Iran nuclear talks collapse, the consequences could be immediate and dangerous. Tensions are already on edge. The U.S. and Israel have openly threatened preemptive strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. In response, Tehran has warned of a strong reciprocal blow, which could include expelling UN inspectors or moving enriched uranium to hidden, secure sites. And that uranium stockpile? It's already near weapons-grade levels. A breakdown in talks could push Iran's breakout time for building a bomb to under 1 week, fueling fears of nuclear proliferation across the globe. The fallout wouldn't stop there. Regional instability could explode, with Iranian-backed groups like Hezbollah and the Houthis stepping up proxy attacks. Israel might act alone, launching unilateral strikes to halt Iran's progress. Diplomatically, Washington could tighten the economic noose, imposing even harsher sanctions. But that could backfire, deepening Iran's economic crisis and empowering hardliners inside the regime. And let's not forget, the 2015 nuclear deal formally expires in 2025.
Today, after 2 years of negotiations, the United States, together with our international partners, has achieved something that decades of animosity has not: a comprehensive long-term deal with Iran that will prevent it from obtaining a nuclear weapon. This deal demonstrates that American diplomacy can bring about real and meaningful change that makes our country and the world safer and more secure.
Without a new agreement, the world loses critical oversight permanently. In the long run, failure could mean more than just deadlock. It could drive Iran closer to weaponization if attacked and drag the U.S. and Israel into a wider, more dangerous Middle East conflict. As President Trump warns of a very bad day for Iran, the world now faces a razor-thin line between fragile diplomacy and devastating escalation. The U.S.-Iran nuclear talks remain deadlocked, and at the heart of the standoff lie 6 key points of contention. Number 1 is uranium enrichment limits. The United States demands Iran stop enriching uranium close to weapons grade, currently at 60% and inching toward the 90% needed for a bomb. Washington wants critical parts of Iran's nuclear program dismantled. But Iran refuses. It insists on keeping its nuclear infrastructure for peaceful energy use and won't dismantle its centrifuges or facilities. Number 2. Is sanctions relief. Tehran wants immediate relief from harsh U.S. sanctions, especially those choking oil exports and crippling its financial system. But the U.S. says sanctions will only be lifted if Iran agrees to clear, verifiable nuclear limits. No deal, no relief. Number 3. Is deal structure and guarantees. Iran demands solid guarantees, a promise that future U.S. presidents won't back out like Trump did in 2018. But the U.S. won't make permanent commitments. It insists on keeping the power to reimpose sanctions if Iran violates the deal. Number 4 is regional security issues. The U.S. wants to expand the conversation, pushing Iran to rein in its missile program and stop supporting groups like Hezbollah and the Houthis. Iran pushes back, calling this an overreach. For Tehran, these are non-nuclear issues and off the table. Number 5 is negotiation format. The U.S. wants face-to-face talks to speed up progress. Iran says no, insisting on indirect talks through Oman, driven by deep mistrust and a desire not to look weak under pressure. And last, number 6 is verification mechanisms. Washington demands deeper, more intrusive inspections than ever before, beyond even past IAEA protocols. Iran resists, calling these inspections a violation of its national sovereignty. Two voices reflect the divide. We aim for a fair agreement from an equal standpoint, says Iran's Abbas Araghchi. Iran will never obtain a nuclear weapon, vows U.S. Secretary of State Rubio. Iran's response to the U.S. ultimatum is clear and strong. Iran sees the U.S. demands as unfair and threatening. It refuses to shut down its nuclear facilities or stop enriching uranium, calling those demands unrealistic and without legal basis. Iranian officials say their nuclear program is for peaceful use and has already made too much progress to reverse. They also don't forget the past. Iran points to former President Trump's decision to walk away from the 2015 nuclear deal as proof that the U.S. cannot be trusted. That's why Iran now wants strong, written guarantees that any new deal won't be broken again in the future. Tehran is also against direct talks with the U.S. Instead, it prefers talks through Oman to avoid giving in to what it sees as pressure tactics. Even though U.S. sanctions have badly hurt Iran's economy, Iran says it won't negotiate under threats. It believes standing firm is a matter of national pride and sovereignty. At the same time, Iran is watching U.S. and Israeli military moves closely, like bomber deployments and warships near the region. But it hasn't fully closed the door on diplomacy. Iranian leaders say they're still open to talks, but only if the U.S. stops making ultimatums. It's a careful balance. Iran wants relief from sanctions, but it also wants to protect what it calls its legal nuclear rights. President Pezeshkian calls for rebuilding trust, while Supreme Leader Khamenei insists that Iran will not give up its rights under pressure. What happens if Iran walks away from the talks? The United States could be looking at serious trouble. First, there's the risk of military conflict. If the U.S. launches airstrikes, Iran might hit back, not just at American forces, but also at allies like Israel or countries in the Gulf. This could even block oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, sending fuel prices around the world soaring. Economically, the U.S. has already put heavy sanctions on Iran, so new ones may not have much effect. But if America clashes with Europe, who still want to save the old nuclear deal, the U.S. could lose important diplomatic support. In the region, things could get even more unstable. Groups supported by Iran, like the Houthis and Hezbollah, might launch more attacks against U.S. forces or allies. Meanwhile, Iran's nuclear program could move even closer to building a bomb, raising fears of a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. The U.S.'s global image could also take a hit. Failed talks may push Iran closer to countries like Russia and China, who might help Iran bypass U.S. sanctions. At home, critics of former President Trump's maximum pressure strategy could get louder, especially if the conflict grows and leads to more chaos or economic trouble. In the end, without talks, the U.S. risks a long and dangerous standoff with no easy way out.